Hi everyone, it's David from Automotive Press. Here we have a 2025 Acura MDX. This is Type S as well, which is my favorite. And I know it's a bit of a gloomy day today. It's super cold here in Vancouver, but I'm super excited to be talking about this because in my mind, there's no doubt that MDX Type S is one of my all-time favorite performance three-row SUVs because there aren't that many performance SUVs to begin with, especially one like this where you get a practicality, functionality of a three-row SUV, but mixed in with performance-oriented powertrain, drivetrain, handling, and so forth. I think it's a very unique model without too much competition, at least in this price range. You're gonna have to move up to some expensive BMW or Mercedes models to get this level of performance, and they're much more expensive. So there's a lot to like about the MDX Type S. So let me tell you more about this refreshed 2025 Acura MDX Type S. Let's go. Welcome back. So this Acura MDX has gone through some major refreshing for 2025, not so much in terms of powertrain and chassis and so forth, but the interior has gone through transformation. That's an important one because we really couldn't stand the touchpad that Acura held on to for so long for MDX, and now we finally have a touch panel. So more on that a little bit later on. But this particular iterations of the MDX is the highest performing one because it's Type S. It's my all-time favorite three-row performance SUV. In order to get this amount of performance with this kind of feel, you're gonna have to pay a lot more money if it's something from a German automaker such as Mercedes or Audi or BMW. But here you are, you have almost German-like performance and feel at a lot lower price. And in many aspects, the MDX Type S doesn't really have a competition because brands like Lexus with their TX doesn't have a performance variant. And even if you look at some other brands that are not necessarily luxury brands such as Mazda, it's not quite at the same level of performance. So I would say this MDX Type S is definitely one of a kind, but let's see how good the quality is. We'll do the whole exterior look and then we'll take a look at the inside, we'll take it for a drive. And you know my routine here, so I always do my quality check. And this is about 3.9 millimeter here, about 4 millimeter there, 3.5. And this one has a gasket, so it's a little hard to measure, but it's about 3.8. And then 3.6. So I will admit that the MDX, while it's beautifully crafted and beautifully manufactured, are not the best in terms of the gaps, even though maybe the gaps are not the most important thing in quality control. I always find that Acura tends to have a little bit of a wider gap than I like to see. I think Lexus does a better job because you can tell right here the gaps are actually pretty wide, but it is well aligned, and then the paint quality is excellent, even though it's hard to tell right now with all the raindrops and everything. You can tell that the glossy finish, the clear coat on it, is excellent. There's also minimal orange peel. Again, it's hard to tell right now. So the overall quality is still very good, especially if you look at this field cap. It's hard to get this part right, and oftentimes car companies have this part that's a little bit misaligned, but you can tell it's a perfect flush finish. So the overall body integrity is excellent. Like I said, painted looks really good. Let's hop inside and see how good the interior is. Okay, so now I'm inside the MDX Type S, and wow, I am so happy that we finally have a proper touch panel right here. You can tell it's a Google-based system, and it's a 12.3 inches, so it's not quite as big as what we see sometime in the Lexus model, which is often 14 inches, but still beautifully designed, really fast response, and I love it. It's a bit far, I think, but not too bad. I can still reach it. I also have a 12.3 inches digital cluster right here, and I know it's a little bit dark right now, so it's hard to see, but this whole section has been redesigned. We don't have the touchpad anymore here. Instead, we have a big non-slip surface for charging the phones, two big cup holders, some cubby hole right here as well, volume, and then also push button for the shifter, which I'm never being crazy about, but that's okay. I'm pretty happy with what they've done and how they re-engineered the whole center console. So overall, I'm super happy that we finally have a true infotainment system that's touch panel instead of using touchpad. Honestly, I think Acura waited too long to make that change. Still, better late than never, so I'm happy with those changes. In terms of the fit and finish, I mean, Acura does a really good job on the interior. You can tell the stitchings are very precise. It's not wiggly. and then all the plastic pieces are pretty solid. There's nothing that's a hard plastic, so I'm glad about that. You get a bit of a wood looking panel here, and then contrasting color. This one has a red interior, so it's a bit busy. I always say Acura design is on the busy side, not clean. But you know what, if you compare to something like a Lexus TX, I'll take this one over TX anytime, because the TX interior is too business-like, too simple, and it doesn't have that luxury feel, whereas this MDX does feel like an upper premium brand interior, and it's got the nice illumination as well, which you can change to other colors. Nice solid steering wheel, gorgeous interior from my perspective, and in terms of what you get for the money with all the features, I think it's an amazing value. The seats are quite comfortable. It's a pretty good second row seat. Third row, not so useful. I think Lexus TX does have a more legroom and therefore more usable space. But for performance-oriented SUV, I can't ask for much more than that, because this is really designed to be first and foremost a fun, large SUV, and then maybe having the ability to carry people in the third row will be a secondary in terms of its purpose. But the most important thing, of course, is how this thing drives from the road. So let's go for a drive and let's see how this thing performs. Okay, so we're going to take this car for a drive, but before I do that, I just want to show you one more thing, which is to measure the decibels of the noise. So if you drive the car, I'm not going to measure the noise level, because depending on the weather and the type of tires you have, the noise level coming into interior is very different. But what I can do is to measure the noise level when I am stationary. So it's about 40 decibels as a baseline. So let me start the engine, and then I'll keep quiet and just measure the decibel for a second. So again, it was 40 decibels as a baseline. What does it look like now? So jumping around a little bit, but it's about 50 decibels, which means it only gained about 10 decibels after I started the engine. So that's a very quiet interior with the engine idling. Obviously, when I start to drive, it's going to get a lot noisier, but I'm not going to measure that. But I just want to do that to show you how quiet the engine is, which is a 3-liter twin-turbo V6 engine with a 355 horsepower. It doesn't seem like a lot of power these days compared to some other competition, but it's got plenty of torque at low RPM. So let me show you what I mean. Okay, so now I have the MDX Type S on the road, and you guys know that I have a soft spot for large SUVs, especially 3-row SUVs, because I really like large sport utility vehicles, especially if they're performance oriented. And there aren't that many models that are kind of focused on performance anymore. So Acura with the MDX Type S, it's kind of sort of sitting alone in the marketplace, at least within this price range. We don't have a Lexus TX that's truly performance oriented. Infiniti models are not quite as performance oriented as they used to be as well. So you kind of have to move up to a BMW or Mercedes models to get a true performance feel. And they're much more expensive, as much as $20, $30, maybe even $40,000 more. So within this price range, we just don't have that many. I would say if you don't have to stick with the kind of luxury brand, then I think Mazda CX-90 and CX-70 are both performance oriented. In fact, they feel even sportier than this Type S in terms of the steering feel, because they really have a solid character. But they don't have things like air suspension that we have in this Type S. And the interior of this Type S looks more gorgeous. It looks more performance minded. So really the Type S is kind of sitting by itself in this market, and it's also just really fun to drive. Granted, it's not a true performance model like you might find in the AMG models from Mercedes, but it's more than sufficient. It's got plenty of torque. The peak torque happens at pretty low RPM, and you can really feel that. I'm not going to be able to drive too fast right now around the city, but I have been driving this for the last few days, and I love the balance and the combination of the power, torque, the transmission shifting, as well as the overall feel. I will admit though that the steering is light but accurate, so it is good in terms of handling and cornering. I just wish that they made the steering a bit heavier with a little bit more feedback, because that is one of the weaknesses of Acura. It just doesn't have enough feedback. Same goes for Lexus as well. And so you kind of have to move to German automakers to get any kind of proper feedback. So that's one disappointment, but otherwise the car is a beautiful vehicle to drive. The ride is absolutely amazing because it's air suspension. It can go up and down, obviously. but it stabilizes the entire vehicle just because air suspension is able to handle things that normal springs and shocks cannot do. And so the suspension is perfect. It's very quiet. Again, I showed you the quietness a little bit earlier with the engine. So it's almost too good in terms of performance model. I would have challenged Acura to just give me a little bit more steering feel, make this whole thing a bit more aggressive, and then it's near perfect. But as it stands now, because the competitions do not really offer something like this, I'm still very happy with this. It is no longer that cheap anymore, but it is still a lot cheaper than many of the German counterparts. Now if I step on the gas a little bit right now, there you go. The way that they calibrated the transmission and the shifting makes you feel like this car has a way more power and torque than what's stated in the spec sheet. And the steering is super quick. So if I move like this, you can tell my head is moving very quickly because the vehicle tracks straight and it goes to exactly where I pointed. And not too many large SUVs can do that. I think really only the Mazda CX-90 and the 70 series come anywhere close to offering this level of performance. And like I said, I prefer their steering feel. So definitely do look into Mazda, even though you're not getting a premium brand. They do feel like a premium model, and for the price, I think CX-90 and CX-70 are amazing value because they're really fun to drive as well. So I would say those are the only sort of a closest competition to the MDX Type S, but overall there's not too many competition out there. So I think it's a beautiful ride, really enjoy it. Definitely more fun to drive than TX. Even the base MDX is more fun to drive than the base TX. But of course, they tend to cater to different customers. The Acura always tend to focus on performance, and Lexus tend to focus on comfort and quietness and refinement. So the two have a different customer base. This vehicle is manufactured in East Liberty plant in Ohio by Honda/Acura, a very proven plant that produces other Acura models as well. And it has gotten really good reliability records, so I don't worry too much about reliability over long term. And most of all, I'm just really, really happy with the combination of the value, the balance of the ride and drive, and the overall quality is just excellent as well. So that's a lot to think about if you're kind of shopping for this. But again, if you're looking for a 3-row SUV that can give you that fun to drive character, then consider this, or maybe the Mazda CX-70 or CX-90. But you wouldn't want to buy a Lexus TX for that purpose, just because it's a very comfortable and refined SUV, but not really fun to drive. So those are some of the key differentiators between the MDX Type S or even the regular MDX compared to others. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below if you've got some questions about the MDX or MDX Type S or anything else for that matter. Hopefully I can answer some of the questions for you in the future videos. But for now, if you can give me a thumbs up and make some comments, that would be appreciated. And if you haven't done so yet, would you kindly subscribe as well? Until next video, I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much.